Top Gun. Talk to me your path to Top Gun and what Top Gun was like and what did you do after you graduated?
Yeah, and if people are watching or listening to this and thinking, "Oh, I've seen Top Gun and Top Gun Maverick, I know everything about what that's like," no, sorry to say, it's nothing like that.
What?
So when you leave Top Gun, I'll start at the end. You go back to the fleet as a training officer, and you are then the person in charge of making sure everyone is as tactical as possible. Well, the training officer that came to VFA 86, where I was a junior officer, was Chili Winter. And he was amazing dude. I mean, again, like we talked about before, he probably was the guy in flight school who made everything look easy, and darn him was good looking and just, good on the ball and everything. And so he came to VFA 86 and took an interest in everyone and everything. And one day we're sitting around like, Jell-O, what are you going to do after 86? I said, yeah, I don't know, don't really want to be a Blue Angel, don't really want to be an astronaut, so I don't want to go to top test pilot school. I said, I think what I'd really like, and I'm not that good at landing on the boat, so I'm not trying to be an LSO. I said, I think I'd like to be good at the airplane. And he goes, well, you should go to Top Gun. And, when I was a kid, my stepdad first said, you should be a fighter pilot. I remember thinking, that's what other people do. Like, that's not what we do. Or not we, but my brothers and I guess. But I proved that wrong. Like, no, I can do it. And so I had that initial response. Like, I'd seen these guys in Fallon, and they were the Jedis of naval aviation. And I thought, that's somebody else. That's not me. He goes, no, you can do it. And so long story short, I did a few things to throw my hat in the ring. And based on Chili's recommendation alone, according to other bros I've talked to, and a bro is just the term for a Top Gun instructor, they accepted me. And I went and I sat through the academics. And, you probably know this, and I don't know if it's come up on your show. The academics, the way they're presented at the Air Force and the Navy's weapons schools are different. And I don't think ours is better. I just say they're different. But the way that Top Gun does it is you don't look at the slides. You have it all memorized, or at least understood so well you don't need to memorize it, but you can still teach it and know what to say. And the fella who, like on day 2, Homie Cedarholm, he's now the 3-star here in Camp Pendleton of all Marines. He had just murder boarded the day before. And his lecture reign was so polished, so free of distractions, that I was distracted thinking, oh crap, what have I done? I can't do this. And so I didn't learn anything about what he was teaching. I just sat there with self-doubt. And then fast forward, 8 months later, I'm standing giving my murder board and I pass and I think, my goodness, how is it a person can do this? And I'm not standing here or sitting here saying, look how great Jell-O was. I'm going to say though, I think it's amazing that the human can give a 2.5, 3.5 hour lecture completely without looking at the slides or notes from I won't even say from memory, but from your being, because you know it so well, because you've committed yourself to doing that. And so for me, it was a real great maturing process, like so much of my career was, because it again erased some self-doubt. Like if you pour yourself into something, you can do it. And that was just, by the way, the lectures. Then there's the flying and all these other things. But that was a really amazing tour.
You probably can relate to this. I was just talking to another FO on this past trip who taught pilot training like me. The one aspect I found really rewarding and very cool was you can take someone right off the street who barely can spell airplane, and then 4 months later, they're flying on the wing 3 feet away from you, solo, in the weather. But it's, I think, a testament to how we've built flight training, the lessons that have been learned in blood, all these things, just kind of a building block approach. That was my takeaway early on. It took me a while to figure this out after someone told me 15 different times, but it's just one step at a time. Now, you might have to be able to do one step at a time, all within a half a millisecond or whatever it might be, but it's a building block approach for a lot of these programs. And I think the military's done, at least with aviation, they've cracked the code for building aviators, and it comes to building block approach a lot of the times.
I think you're right, Rain, and I'll tell you, I'll try to keep it as quick as possible. A story, it's not totally related, but I think it's kind of important, and maybe your listeners will take some heart out of this. I was at a bar watching a football game with my son and his friend, And his friend's dad, who is about mid-50s like me, has not ever been an aviator. But he says to me, hey, I'm thinking about getting an airplane because they've got this one with a parachute so I can go wherever I want. And even after a beer, I was like, I think that's a really bad idea. And because you can't just get to that level and you can't just say, I'm just going to use this parachute if I need it. And I tried to explain to him how expensive it is, and it's probably going to total the airplane. And because of that, you'll be reluctant to use it. And because of that, you'll probably fly in conditions where you'll die. And he didn't think much of that, but I haven't heard if he bought it yet or not. And I hope he doesn't. And I don't mean to call him out if he happens to be watching or listening. But yeah, you can't just, to your point, just go do the things that experienced aviators do and expect that you can fake it in a sense because you've got some get out of jail free card. And we all know of doctors and other people that fly when they shouldn't. JFK Jr., maybe, I don't know all the details of that, but I know he killed himself in a general aviation airplane. So yeah, it's serious business.
Well, I am legal to go get out there in a single engine, whatever, and go shoot an ILS. Would I do it? No way. It's like legal versus smart, proficient, all those things come into factor. So, yeah, don't go buy a plane and just rely on the parachute. Everything
parachute, Rain.
It's fine. It's fine. Yeah, it's an unforgiving business, but it's like anything. You gotta get the reps. You gotta have the experience, and it takes usually quite a while and some hard lessons learned occasionally there. What was the most challenging aspect of Top Gun for you?
Well, just like in my history, it was either landings in the T2 or dropping bombs in the TA4. For some reason, I could not get past defensive BFM. And if your listeners and viewers aren't familiar with that, right, you have one-on-one maneuvering, and there's 100 different terms for this. But at least in the Navy, and I assume you guys do something similar, you can start in different positions relative to each other so that you can get certain learning objectives. You said earlier, part task training. So if I start, let's say you and I are going to go BFM or dogfight, ACM, again, whatever you want to call it. If I start behind you on purpose, 3, 2, 1, fights on, well, then I'm offensive, you're defensive. Now, we may not stay that way, depending on how it goes. And if you're behind me, then I might be defensive, you might be offensive. If we meet at a merge, like two cars passing on the highway, well, then we're high aspect. And then you turn and I turn, and we'll see who ends up offensive and defensive, maybe. The defensive is hard, as you know, because you're looking over your shoulder at the other guy, but then you got to look back in to see what your altitude and airspeed. And oh, by the way, you're trying to take snapshots outside in your mind so you can debrief it later and draw all the arrows accurately. And I just was close, but never quite, well, not never, but I was close to the Top Gun standard. And then we'd fly again that day or the next day, and I'd get closer yet, but like, hey, if you're going to wear the patch and instruct in this, you've got to be good at, you've got to reach the threshold, not good enough. You've got to reach the minimum. And it took me 10 tries, Rain, to finally pass defensive BFM. And it wasn't like they were thinking, what do we do selecting Jell-O here? We should go send him down the hall to somewhere else. It was just, hey, when you get it, then you'll get it, and then you can teach it, but not until then. And so once I finally did pass, and I can remember passing, it was very relieving. And it was with a pilot who unfortunately was later killed in a mishap. But I then internalized defensive BFM, and I found that I actually preferred it. Because I don't know about you, if I start behind you and I stay behind you, okay, whatever, that's kind of satisfying. But if I start in front of you and end up behind you, that's pretty cool. And if I start neutral and I end up behind you, okay, great, but that means you probably made a mistake. But if I start defensive and I can end up at least neutral, well, then I've done a good job, and it's not at your expense necessarily. So I came to enjoy it. But yeah, defensive BFM was my, once more, what is Jell-O going to suck at? And it just took a little persistence, and I got there.
Well, that might segue into, I believe, the last Navy aircraft you flew, which again was the mighty Viper, as an adversary. So you're out there being the bad guy, and obviously a variety of roles from long range to close in. But let's dig into that just a little bit and talk about your adversary days and what that was like.
Well, even so, I first went to Top Gun in 2000, stayed till late 2002. And when we were there at the time, Rain, we were told F-16s are coming. Now, those who know naval aviation adversary history, there were F-16Ns purpose-built for the Navy in the 80s. Evidently, those things were rocket ships. We were getting A's and B's, Block 15s. There were 28 that were, as I understand it, supposed to go to Pakistan. Pakistan detonated a nuke because they were at odds with India, and the State Department said, nope, you're not getting those. So they went straight from Dallas area, wherever they make those, I guess Fort Worth, straight to the boneyard, and were preserved. And then the Air Force and the Navy said, hey, we could use those. So as I understand it, you got 14, we got 14, 10 A's, 4 B's, and we turned them into adversaries. We were told the whole time I was there, they're coming, they're coming. And the first one, I kid you not, showed up the weekend I was leaving. I tried not to look at it. I walked by with the blinders on, damn it.
Yeah.
And, but fast forward to 2013, I get my wings back because of the medical thing, which again is sort of the big climax of my book. And I go there and I learn how to fly the F-16 A and B. And then before long was the head of those and an instructor as well. And I tell people, although I have to caveat this, Rain, I tell people I think it's like this. The F-18 is like my wife, trustworthy, I know it real well. It's where I want to be. The F-16, and again, I say I think it's like this because I don't know, was like that hot, a little fling over here. It handles different. It flies different. It smells different. And anyway, again, I hope she's not in the living room over there.
Wait a minute.
Because I only think it's like that. But
it's got in trouble.
It was amazing. I can remember a couple backseat flights because we had meetings to go to or something. I was like, this is cool. And then my first front seat flight, I could have done solo because the instructor, I think he did take the controls just to demonstrate a HAPL or something. But after that much experience flying F-18s, it was just a different place to reach for the stick over to the right instead of two of my legs. And then one engine instead of two, and a few other things. The visibility was amazing. The performance was incredible. But I know you haven't asked this yet, but the biggest change for me, Rain, was, again, dogfighting, BFM, ACM. I'd get over the top and I'd look down at you and I'd say, oh yeah, baby, I've been here before. And I would try to break the damn stick off because I wanted more than the, 26?
AOA limit. Yeah. Limit.
And it wouldn't give me a bit more. I was like, come on. All I got to do is point at him right now. The F-18 would give me that all day long. And the F-16 would not. So I had to relearn a little bit of basic dogfighting there.
The AOA, it would be nice just once, hey, I want to override this. I know I'm cashing in all my chips, but I would really like to point at this guy and I promise I won't go out of control. If I could just have
evidently, it's bad enough if you do that they wouldn't let us. So
yeah. So the engineers were like, no, that's why we have that. Yeah. You're not going to get this opportunity, which I only got to fight Hornets once doing BFM. And, as my instructor was briefing me was, everyone has a different game plan, rate fight. If you're going to go use the angles, if you're going to use the speed, Viper, we know stay fast. But when a Hornet turns and points at you across the circle, it's just okay, I got to be calm for a minute. I got to survive this one shot because he just cashed in all his energy and now it's mine. But you got to survive that first shot. Yeah. But how many hours did you get flying as an adversary?
Well, as an F-16 adversary, 170. So I would not necessarily call myself a combat pilot. I tell people I flew the F-16, but I don't ever say I was a Viper driver. I mean, I just don't think that's, for guys like you, fair. But I did fly it and I did enjoy it. But yeah,
obviously the mission set for what you were doing, it's used for a different purpose. Primarily, again, go out there and be a bad guy, give a different presentation. Being able to do dissimilar BFM is so much, it's great. Not saying it's better, but going out there and actually fighting someone who has a different performance, different airplane versus going F-16 versus F-16, and someone's got to go mil power only to kind of replicate or, to change things up. Or it's just mano a mano, fly your best machine.
Yep. And in the early F-18, let me rephrase that. In the early Top Gun training where I struggled with the defensive, it was in another F-18. It was similar because I think the idea was, hey, we want you to see what can be done here. And if these are equal aircraft, different pilots, and there is an outcome that's not the way we want, well, guess what? We can attribute that to something other than the aircraft.